Hi, everybody. Today I'm going to read a story from our Wonders book. It's called A Lost Button from Frog and Toad's Our Friend by Arnold Lobel. Toad and Frog went for a long walk. They walked across a large meadow. They walked in the woods. They walked along the river. At last, they went back home to Toad's house. "Oh, drat," said Toad. "Not only do my feet hurt, but I have lost one of the buttons on my jacket." "Don't worry," said Frog. "We will go back to all the places where we walked. We will soon find your button." They walked back to the large meadow. They began to look for the button in the tall grass. "Here is your button," cried Frog. "That is not my button," said Toad. "That button is black. My button was white." Toad put the black button in his pocket. A sparrow flew down. "Excuse me," said the sparrow. "Did you lose a button? I found one." "That is not my button," said Toad. "That button has 2 holes. My button had 4 holes." Toad put the button with 2 holes in his pocket. They went back to the woods and looked on the dark paths. "Here is your button," said Frog. "That is not my button," cried Toad. "That button is small. My button was big." Toad put the small button in his pocket. A raccoon came out from behind a tree. "I heard that you were looking for a button," he said. "Here is one that I just found." "This is not my button," wailed Toad. "That button is square. My button was round." Toad put the square button in his pocket. Frog and Toad went back to the river. They looked for the button in the mud. "Here is your button," said Frog. "That is not my button," shouted Toad. "That button is thin. My button is thick." Toad put the thin button in his pocket. He was very angry. He jumped up and down and screamed, "The whole world is covered with buttons, and not one of them is mine." Toad ran home and slammed the door. There on the floor, he saw his white, 4-holed, big, round, thick button. "Oh," said Toad, "it was here all the time. What a lot of trouble I have made for Frog." Toad took all of the buttons out of his pocket. He took his sewing box down from the shelf. Your sewing box is where you keep the needle and the thread. He took his sewing box down from the shelf. Toad sewed the buttons all over his jacket. The next day, Toad gave his jacket to Frog. Frog thought it was beautiful. He put it on and jumped for joy. None of the buttons fell off. Toad had sewed them on very well. See the jacket with all the buttons on it? That was his special gift he made for his friend because he had caused trouble looking for the lost button. That's the end of the story. Remember, on this page, it talks about parts of the story. Here's a thing about Arnold Lobel up here. Arnold Lobel was often sick and missed many days of school when he was young. When he went back to school, he made friends by telling stories and drawing pictures. Many years later, Lobel's children liked to catch frogs and toads. Lobel loved the animals and wrote about them in his Frog and Toad stories. Arnold Lobel wanted to write about good friends. Write about your friend. Tell how you help each other. Do you see this box down here? This is where your writing idea is. You could write about a time that you help your friend and how you help each other. Over here, there's another writing section. Do you see it right there? It says, do you think that Frog or Toad was the better friend in a lost button? Why do you think that? You could use these sentence frames. I think the better friend was blank. He was a better friend because... Which one do you think was the better friend? Frog or Toad? Frog helped his friend look all over for the buttons, and Toad gave his friend a gift by making him a special jacket. So I think they were both good friends. I hope you enjoyed that story. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye, everybody.